Greetings, everyone. DFG here. Hey, guys. Just want to take a moment talk to you about something that was bothering me. That bothered me over the last couple of months with just behavior of mankind, and in this behavior, it's in reference to what I coin as cognitive intelligence. Now, what I mean by cognitive intelligence is simply, one using his own facts or our own facts, and also researching of those facts to validate that those facts are correct, and then formulating an intelligent opinion or formulating a perspective that can be properly uh, communicated, where one can be either influenced or at least provoked to think. Now, let me give you an example, or a couple of examples of what I'm talking about. I guess about a week or so ago, Stephen Curry, he's a basketball player with one of the NBA teams. If you follow the sport, you know which team that is. If you don't, it really doesn't matter too much. But Stephen Curry made a comment about he didn't believe that anyone had ever landed on the moon. And then there's another example of another player by the name of Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving is also a professional athlete basketball player. Not that it matters that both guys play the same sport, but both guys, Kyrie Irving said that he believed that the earth was flat. And it was interesting that in both instances, these men were attacked, and they were viciously attacked, that they were called dumb jocks. They were told that, they were, uh, uh, corrupting the minds of young people by having young people, question uh, things that they had been trained up to think, and how dare these men think that they could use the platform that they had to express their own personal opinion about something that, for whatever reasons, they chose to believe. Now, what made it even more interesting to me, back to cognitive intelligence, is that the very people who criticized Stephen Curry for saying no one landed on the moon, because Stephen Curry has never been to the moon, so how could he know that if no one has ever landed on the moon? The same individual who were criticizing Kyrie Irving, were criticizing him because Kyrie Irving probably has never been to the ends of the earth. So they were both criticized because neither one of them had ever either been on the moon, or neither one of them had ever been, best of my knowledge, to the ends of the earth. So how can you go out and you make a comment like this when you've never validated that? You don't know for absolute fact that what you're saying is true. Well, here's the other side of that story. The very people who criticize both of these men, guess what? For making such asinine statements, those individuals have never been to the ends of the earth, nor have any of those individuals landed on the moon themselves. Yet they felt that they had a right to rip into these guys for something that these guys happened to profess that they believed. Now, both of those guys have since come back and say, "Oh no, I was only kidding," and of course they would say that because I'm sure their sponsors and their handlers and their bosses, owners of the league, pretty much threatened them that if they didn't recant what they said, they'd probably find themselves unemployed in the very nearable future. So they cooperated under what I would call, duress. So where am I going with this? Where I'm going with this is that it's interesting to me that, an expert from NASA didn't jump out and say, hey, what are you guys talking about? Or, hey, let us come here and let us show you some facts beyond video where men have landed on the moon. If you know anything about landing on the moon, when a lot of the scientists who are responsible for keeping the records around how man landed on the moon and all the footage, they have since said that footage was taped over, that they don't have that footage anymore. And they also have said that the scientists who were able to come up with the scientific methods and the process in order to be able to get to the moon. They have since lost those scientists, so therefore they don't have the knowledge to do that any longer. Now, this is absolute fact, and this is coming from the scientific, community, or the science community. Yet these two men were attacked, for having an opinion by people who also have an opinion, and none of that group, those guys, nor the group who attacked them, have no way of knowing one way or the other if that is true or not. And that's what I mean by this, by cognitive intelligence. Cognitive intelligence simply means that you step back and based off of your own learning, your own knowledge, you take the time, investigate, explore, and then you take that knowledge or take that information that you have accumulated, you take that information as a collective, and then you build your argument or you build your case based off of that data. When you don't have that data, then you're just as ignorant as Stephen Curry and Kyrie Irving are, because you don't know either if anybody's ever landed on the moon except that someone told it to you. Or if the earth is flat, as Kyrie said, except someone told you that. Do you know your ancestors up to 1900 believed that the earth was flat? There's an article that I read just recently around this educator in Great Britain in the early 1900s who pretty much had his job threatened and his career threatened because he was teaching contrary that the earth was not flat. And they were ready to fire him and get rid of him and expel him from the education system altogether for what they call such nonsense, such, the word would be demagoguery. Now that was less than 120 years ago. So when you start talking in terms of, what's intelligent thought and what's not intelligent thought, it's dangerous for any of us just to go off of assumptions based off of what someone else has said. And in this instance, even it's dangerous for us to go off of something someone else has shown us without our own willingness and ability to validate this. Now, you can take and extrapolate that and take that down to current and present issues around concepts and things that people believe as far as what you would call, there's a term for it, but I'm going to call it a natural family. What makes up a natural family? You have people who have known since the beginning of time what that constituted. Man, woman, producing children. But now that has changed, and it's simply saying that it doesn't have to be a man and a woman. Now, they can't produce children any other way but man and woman, but two men can raise, a child, in a loving family, or two women can raise a child in a loving family. Now, I'm not going to go out and talk about who's capable of raising children and putting children in the proper environment, but I will say that there's no way that a nuclear family, that's what I'm going to call it, can be better for a child. A non-nuclear family could be better for a child than a nuclear family. In other words, the things that a father and a mother brings to a child are totally different than two lovers will bring to a child, regardless of what anybody has to say about that. Now, of course, that's my opinion, and I'm sure like Kyrie and like Stephen Curry, I'll be criticized for it. Not because you have facts, it's just because you have been preconditioned to not think with cognitive intelligence. In other words, allowing a lifetime of information to validate what is truth versus what is not true. And this could be said about many things. A lot of young girls today are not developing in the manner that's healthy psychologically because they're being shown these image of all these, models on television, models in the magazine, that, a beautiful woman is thin and, and she has, long hair and beautiful eyes, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of these little girls and young women are hating themselves because of an image that's being portrayed. That's not true, because no one tells them that when these people put these individuals on magazines that they paint their faces up, that they put, contacts in their eyes, that I don't care if the hair is down their back and blind, it's still a weave. No one tells them that. No one tells them that a lot of these women that stay thin use drugs and don't eat. So they're not natural. It's not natural what they're looking at, but because of a lack of cognitive intelligence, we have, created this illusion of what is real versus what is not real. And my point here, this message here, is simply to say to you and all of us that we're at a crossroads, in my opinion, okay, around what our future is going to look like. If it's going to be a good future or if it's not going to be a good future. And I will tell you that if we're not taking time for cognitive intelligence, in other words, what's real and what's real based off of what is fact versus what's comfortable, regardless of whether or not it's true or not, because that's the way everybody else thinks. So I'd rather just go along and get along. We're in danger because right now the line is blurred between the two. It's blurred between what's real and what's not real. And it's getting worse, unfortunately. A whole lot worse. And that can't, in my opinion, have any, could not have a good end at the end of the day or the year. Now here's one of the things I'm gonna say to you guys here also. And for some of you guys, who listen to these videos, you profess to be Christians. You profess to believe in the word of Yahweh. Well, let me give you what Yahweh has to say about conforming to the world's opinion. Okay, in other words, what the government opinion is, what the what social awareness is, or the social norms are. Let me tell you here's what your Bible says about this. This is what your Most High says about this. It says, and this is quote unquote, you can find this in Romans chapter 12, verse 2. Don't copy the behavior and the custom. I'll say it again. It says, don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let Yahweh transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know Yahweh's will for you, which is good, pleasing, and perfect. I want you to think about that. I want you to reflect on that, Christians, believers. Now, Yahweh is telling you to go contrary to what the educators are telling you or the social norms are telling you. Yahweh, by the way, says the earth is flat. Now, don't take that up with me. Take it up with him. I don't know if the earth is flat. I haven't been to the end of the earth. I don't know if man has landed on the moon because I haven't been on the moon. Never been offered the opportunity. And if I was to go and if I get an opportunity to go on the moon, I promise you I'm going to come back and tell you what I observed. But until that time comes, I leave the question, open. I guess, maybe in the afterlife I'll find out if I don't find out in this life. But, I am open to that knowledge. But I'm not going to accept any knowledge just because that's what man says. Yahweh says the moon is a lesser light. He didn't say it was a substance, a solid that man could land on. And I'm not saying that it isn't. I'm telling you, now I'm talking to the believer. Yahweh said it was a light. He called it a lesser light. That's in Genesis chapter 1. Think around about verse 5, verse 6. Read it for yourself, believers in Yahweh. So now, for those believers, that's what I'm talking to with this last part of this message, to the believer. If Yahweh said the moon is a lesser light and not a solid, Yahweh says that the four corners of the earth, that the earth has corners, have edges to it, a bottom and a firmament above it, or vault that the earth is inside of, who are you going to believe? Who are you going to believe? Him, or are you going to believe man? Something to think about, isn't it? So I challenge you again, guys, don't let people dictate to you what to think. Go find out, get your own fact, make sure those facts are backed up by evidence, and make sure it's backed up by intellect, which has to be a lifetime of study and research. Thank you guys for listening. Have a great day. DFG, Gideon's Flock. Bye.